Hi everyone. So you guys are able to hear my voice? If that is the case, you can just message in the chat box. Hi. Me, if that is the case, you can just message in the chat box. Hi, so that we can start the session. Yes. Okay, so I guess you guys are able to hear me also. Fine. Without wasting much time, let us start the session. And so, as we know, e-invoicing has already been implemented from 1st October. So we are just trying to cover the practical challenges in implementation of e-invoicing and what was the latest notifications, press release, relaxations which were issued under e-invoicing on 30th October. So let me start the session. Myself, CA Prajwal KA, indirect tax expert at ClearTax. So before starting, if you want to go live for the e-invoicing for your business also, we have a wonderful option here where we provide 1-day onboarding for e-invoicing with ClearTax. The only thing which you'll have to do is you will have to just fill in the form that has been circulated on the chat box, and our experts will get in touch with you. And in 1 day, the entire onboarding process for implementation of e-invoicing will be completed. It might be integration or Excel-based ingestion. At least in the initial days, Excel-based ingestion will work, and later on integrations can work where you can complete the entire onboarding for e-invoicing through ClearTax. So just a small review of how e-invoice generation happens. So the e-invoice generation happens in the way which is shown in the diagram below. E-invoices is not an invoice which is generated on the government portal. Rather, e-invoices are those invoices which are generated on your ERP, which is again pushed to the IRP. Here I mean to say invoice registration portal. After I generate an invoice in my ERP, the details of this invoice are pushed to my IRP. The IRP does few validations, after which IRP generates 3 additional fields, which is the IRN, invoice reference number. The next one is a quick response code. The third one is a digitally signed invoice. This digitally signed invoice is of the IRP and not of the registered taxpayer, that is the person who is raising the invoice. Post which the data will also be transmitted to the GST portal, that is GSTR1, as well as to the NIC portal for the e-way bill details. E-way bill details might be part A or part B, and it can be part A and part B also. It depends upon what information you push it in the e-way bill e-invoicing portal. So the notifications and press release for applicability of e-invoicing which the government had given on 30th September is something like this. As we know, the initial notification which came specifically specified that e-invoicing is applicable only if your turnover exceeds 500 crores. Now the question is, should we consider this 500 crores for the financial year 1920 or previous financial years also? For which, on the NIC portal, during first week of September, where the registrations had started, it was clearly popping up a message saying that if your turnover for the financial year 1920 has exceeded 500 crores, then only you will be eligible for e-invoicing. So people came into a conclusion that only if my turnover in 1920 has exceeded 500 crores, then only e-invoicing would be made applicable. However, on 30th September, there was a new notification which the CBIC released saying that the 500 crores turnover is for the financial year 17-18 or 18-19 or 19-20. That is, in any of these three financial years, if your turnover has exceeded 500 crores, then you will be eligible for e-invoicing. So it is not just 19-20. In any of the preceding financial year from 17-18 to 19-20, if your turnover has exceeded 500 crores, then by default you will be eligible for e-invoicing. One more clarification for calculating the turnover is the government has clarified that the supply of goods, services, and exports also should be considered for calculating the above prescribed turnover. One more major relaxation which was given on 30th September through notification 71/2020 was regarding the B2C QR code. Although B2C QR code does not have any impact or any connectivity through the e-invoicing, though government has given a separate notification altogether saying that a B2C QR code for sale to an unregistered person where my aggregate turnover exceeds 500 crores has been deferred to 1st December. That is 2 months relaxation has been given. You need not generate a B2C QR code for sale to an unregistered person till 1st December 2020. This is a relaxation which has been given. One more major relaxation which the industry is very happy because of e-invoicing getting implemented on time, that is from 1st October 2020, but government has given a major relaxation which is very useful. So the press release has clarified this. No notification has been issued, though the press release specifically says as per rule 48.4 and 48.5, an e-invoice is a valid document for you to give it to your customer. Otherwise, the invoice which you have given today, if you give it after 1st October, then that invoice is not at all an invoice, it is just a piece of paper. That would no more be called as an invoice at all. However, since being the first month, government has said for the first 30 days, you need not issue an e-invoice. You can issue a normal invoice. That also will be considered as a valid invoice. However, you will have to generate IRN within 30 days from the date of issue of normal invoice. Which means to say, I can issue a normal invoice which I am issuing today to the customer. However, I should generate this e-invoice with the IRN within 30 days. With a practical example I have given in the following data. So today is 3rd October, I issue a normal invoice. This is valid invoice. Government says this is a valid invoice. When if IRN is generated for this invoice within 2nd November, then only this invoice is valid. If within 30 days IRN is not generated, then this is not a valid invoice at all. 15th October, if I have generated an invoice, I will have to generate an IRN for that invoice within 14th November. So 31st October, 30th November. This relaxation is only for the first month, that is for October 2020. Post which from November onwards, e-invoice should be generated immediately. Say 1st November 2020, I generate a normal invoice and then I generate an invoice. No, you should not do like that. We should be able to generate a normal invoice, not normal invoice on your end, push it to the IRP, get a e-invoice, and that e-invoice only is applicable from 1st November 2020 onwards. So that is what for every invoice issued from 1st November 2020, IRN generation will be compulsory requirement at the time of issuance of invoice itself. This relaxation will not continue. Otherwise, it will be treated as invalid document. So these were the few clarifications, notifications, press releases which were issued on 30th September for the applicability of e-invoicing. So let us move back to the possible challenges for applicability of the e-invoicing, various types of reconciliations, how will it have an impact on my GSTR1, e-way bill, everything. We'll start analyzing one by one. So the possible challenges after e-invoicing is made applicable for any enterprise would be the enterprise should be capable of generating the e-invoicing on a real-time basis. It should be almost real-time. Say now I raise the invoice, I'll have to directly push it to the IRP, get the IRN, and then issue this invoice. This should be on a real-time basis. While doing such activity, there will be a lot of challenges. Integrations might not have happened, or I would have not yet connected to the IRP. The API access would have been disabled. There might be multiple scenarios like this. Apart from that, there might be downtime of the IRP portal. What needs to be done in such cases? I definitely agree. There would be IRP downtime also. That is why IRP has come up with multiple websites, e-invoice1.gst.gov.in. Like that, there are 10 different websites which has been launched. Although as on today, only one website is working. So gradually, even government will come up, increasing the number of websites from 1 to 10 as they have informed. But one more advantage of using any GSP, ASP, GSP solution provider like ClearTax might be we push it through API calls. How you are doing, you might be downloading the JSON, go upload the JSON on the government portal. That will not be doing. We will be doing to the API access. So, our API access, we have multiple APIs, GSP service providers. So, once one road is blocked, we will be using the another one so that we can generate the e-invoice on an immediate basis. And one more thing is, as we know that the cancellation of any e-invoice will be done within 24 hours, post which you cannot cancel, and archiving of the data also will not be made available on the ERP. It is as good as post 24 hours, the data will not even stay on e-invoicing portal. So all the mandatory fields needs to be captured. Otherwise, as per the rule 48.4 and 5, all the mandatory fields which are required to be present on invoice also needs to be captured. Yes, we should have a sound infrastructure with 24/7 electricity and internet connectivity. Otherwise, the system during the automated integrations which push the data to the IRP getting back will create a problem. And the major thing is checking for e-invoicing vendor KYC. I'll tell you why this is major important. As on today, we might be raising an invoice in the trade name. However, after e-invoicing coming into picture, if we can see the e-invoicing template which the government has launched, it has specifically mentioned the legal name of the business should be a mandatory field. Say example, let us take a direct example like ClearTax. ClearTax is the trade name. However, the legal name of ClearTax is Def Macro Software Private Limited. So we would be rising as on today to ClearTax. But from now onwards, I cannot raise an invoice to ClearTax. Rather, I should have a document or detail having Def Macro Software Private Limited as my legal name. So we should have the e-invoicing with the vendor KYC also. And one more thing is backdated entries, which is a major drawback I can see. Although the NIC has clarified that I can generate an e-invoice even for the backdated entries. However, that should be on real-time basis. I cannot issue an invoice later. I cannot generate a e-invoice, which is not the right way. And one more thing is the QR code, which the government is returning, which has to be printed on the invoice, is not a normal QR code. A normal Paytm or a Google Pay scanner can read this. Rather, the government has only released a QR code reader which is available on the NIC portal, and you should use that QR code to read it. Otherwise, if you read it through normal, you cannot even understand. It is an encrypted QR code. And what will happen to the credit debit notes? This is a major question which we will take up in the further slides. The major question: what will happen to the credit debit notes generated on or after 1st October? But this credit note is linked to the invoices which has been raised before. So let me give a brief about it. As we know that we are not required to give the original invoice details, that is the original invoice number nor the original invoice details date for the credit debit notes anymore. This has been removed from the GSTR1 also. From which month? This has been removed from the September month return filing onwards. So this will not have any impact you can continue to raise a credit debit notes on the e-invoicing portal also. So these were the possible challenges and how to deal with those challenges, which we took it in a simple way. So next would be implication of e-invoicing on GSTR1, GSTR3B and e-way bill system. So I have already explained the workflow of e-invoicing, raising an e-invoice on accounting, push it to IRP and get back the IRN number. So the other thing is, now from August month itself, you would have seen this already, saying that after I file my GSTR1, the 3B has already auto-computed my GSTR1 values, all my outward supplies details, into different tables that might be 3.1A and 3.1B. 3.1A is my normal sales, 3.1B is my exports or zero rated supplies. So from now onwards, what would be the additional thing is, after I raise my e-invoice, since the data is already pushed to the GSTR1, your only thing will be reconcile your GSTR1 with your books, post which the data will automatically flow to the 3B also. Your work is reduced to a great extent. The next one would be implications of e-invoicing on e-way bill system. See, as we know, I can give all the details which are required for my e-way bill generation on my e-invoicing portal itself. So the question which would come is, why is the e-way bill portal required? There are multiple other scenarios where e-way bill would be required even if e-invoicing is not raised, say for delivery children, job work. Such cases will have to directly use the e-way bill portal. So initially both will run hand in hand, but after a few days it might get reduced to a great extent. And one more thing is, say I have generated today on 3rd October, I have the time to cancel this e-invoice before 4th October 3:20 p.m. So before this, I have also generated my e-way bill also. Now how to cancel? The scenario would be difficult because I'll have to log into my e-way bill portal, cancel the e-way bill first, then come back to the e-invoicing portal, then cancel the e-invoice. This is the scenario how it should be done. But one thing which needs to be noted is, even for a cancelled e-way bill document, you can raise an e-way bill again, but that is not the case with IRN. You cannot raise an IRN for the same document number which you have cancelled. So we need to be a bit cautious while cancelling or generating an IRN. The one more thing is, in case of sales returns, e-way bill needs to be generated along with the delivery challenge. You cannot generate directly for the credit note how we are doing for invoices. The other thing which needs to be taken care would be, before generating e-invoice, we will have, for which e-way bill is also required, we need to take one action in our place, that would be whether the buyer's GST number is blocked or not. You can generate an e-invoice, however, you will not be able to generate an e-invoice if it is blocked. So we will have to take a due care on it before we generate an e-invoice. So this is what I explained. E-way bill cannot be generated for credit debit notes. They have to go and do as a delivery challenge and for services also. Then if you have given only the transporter ID, then only party details will be filled. Otherwise, again, you will have to go to the e-way bill portal, log into the e-way bill portal, put the vehicle number, vehicle details, and then you can generate the part fee of it. If you're transporting by road, then vehicle number, vehicle type should be passed. If you're transporting by ship or rail, then the document number and date should be passed. And the vehicle number, this was major amendment which happened in e-way bill. The vehicle number which we put in the e-way bill should match with the Vahan database. Otherwise, it will not get validated. And the pin-to-pin distance will be automatically validated. So clear tax solutions to industry specific challenges. There will be many challenges. People think after invoicing coming into picture, the compliance burden would have been reduced to a great extent. I agree. There would be a reductant in compliance thing, but rather the number of reconciliations has increased to a great extent. Now, from now onwards, compliance will take a bit lesser time. However, before doing the compliance, we will have to reconcile the details which is there in my books, GSTR1, e-way bill, everything in a different way so that we don't mess up with filing the wrong data to the GSTR1 or 3B. This is what multiple reconciliations which has been mentioned on the PPT, e-way bill versus GSTR1, IRN versus sales register, IRN versus e-way bill, IRN versus GSTR1, IRN versus GSTR2A for inbound invoices, that is my purchase invoices. We will go into each section by section. The other things how ClearTax can help you for industry challenges would be, there would be multiple reminders for the e-way bill generation so that you can come to know how to, if you had forgotten, if to generate any e-way bill. And in case of integrations for all my B2B invoices, that also can happen in a smooth way. Scheduling of invoices of bulk generation. This is one of the major things. Say, I don't want to hamper my business. So what I'll do is, for the day, I want to generate all the invoices at the end of the day, say after 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the night. So I can schedule it and ClearTax will automatically trigger those after that time, generate it, get back the details and store back in your ERP. I'll just show you at the end of the session a small demo how ClearTax works, how to generate, how to upload the data to ClearTax, how the data will be uploaded to the government portal, how to cancel an IRN, how to print an invoice, how to get back the total to the ERP. Everything, a small 5 minutes demo will be shown so that we get to understand how exactly the entire process is happening. So, fixing of flow of credit debit notes, a small recap of the credit debit notes. What we have to do is, see, normally after e-invoicing coming into picture, a credit note should always be raised by a person who is supplying goods, which was not the concept earlier. Now the credit note always should be raised by a person who has raised an invoice. Say credit note, nothing but sales. So when my turnover is exceeding 500 crores, I will also have to raise a e-invoice for this credit note. This is simple. But let us take the reverse way around for the debit notes. I don't know. Since it is my debit note, it will be the other party's credit note. I don't know whether the other person has crossed the turnover of 500 crores or not. So he might issue a normal invoice or a normal debit note also. So we will have to take due care of it. So this needs to be noted and the company has to do a proper accounting for this. And one more thing good about ClearTax is, for the initial days, at least after you fill the chat box, I mean, if you fill the description in the chat box which has been mentioned, you can use the ClearTax e-invoicing solution for free. Yes, you heard it right. It is, you can use it for free at least for a few days. If you like it, then we can go ahead how to do it as well. Our experts will get in touch with you and everything will be done in a smooth way. The only thing is you can mention all the details which has been circulated in the chat box. You can fill that form and you can do it. So let us start the various reconciliations which would arise because of e-invoicing. So the first thing would be, I would have already raised an e-invoice. So the next question would be, I will download a dump of all the invoices for which I've raised the e-invoice from my sales register and try to do a reconciliation for both these. This is my sales register. This is my details of e-invoicing. So I should do a reconciliation of these two. There might be issues while doing the reconciliation of these two, such as the following. Apart from these, if anything else is there, then we'll have to take a due care of it. Why there is a difference? The first thing, it is a financial credit debit note which does not have any GST impact. So as we know, from 1718, 1819, 1920 also, all the financial credit debit notes which do not have any GST impact are just accounted in my books of accounts. It is neither pushed to the GSTR1 portal, nor to the 3B portal, nor to any of the tables in GSTR9 also. So this reconciliation has to be done, and if the difference between between my sales register and e-invoicing is because of this financial credit debit notes, then we need not worry. The second one would be advances. In case of advances, what would happen is, for advance received for supply of service, GST, the tax has to be remitted in the same month itself, which is not in the case of goods. However, after TCS is applicable for real estate sector from 1st April, that would also, or 1st October, that would also come into picture. But advances received for which I need not raise an invoice, but the taxes has to be paid to the government. So when I raise an invoice, that is advance receipt voucher, in my books of accounts, there would be showing an GST amount of on which, whereas I would have not raised the invoice because this is just an e-invoice, so there would be a gap under it. So again, this kind of reconciliation should be bucketed into different categories so that we get it into in a single shot while doing the reconciliation at the end. The third one would be, as per section 15, valuation, discounts which are given during or at the time of supply, then only those discounts has to be reduced from my taxable value. Otherwise, you will not be treated, that would not be treated as a supply. So, if any discount has been given after the supply has happened, then that would not form a part of my e-invoicing. Say 100 rupees is my taxable value. I have given a discount of 20 rupees after the supply has happened. On my invoice, I can give it as 100 minus 20, 80, but the tax should be on 100 rupees itself, 18 rupees itself, 18% tax rate. So, on my books, it will be showing 80 plus 18, whereas my e-invoicing, it will be just showing 100 plus 18 itself. Because I would have received less in my books, whereas e-invoicing I should show properly. So again, bucketing or categorizing such kind of transactions in a separate thing would be very much required. The second, the next part would be reversal entries in the books of accounts. Say for example, I am using SAP as my ERP. I pass an entry to saying that X party account debit to sales. Post which I immediately understood that I've done a mistake and I don't have an access to delete an entry. So what I do, I pass a reversal entry. Sales account debit to X party. So what has happened? The transactions has nullified. But however, e-invoice is not generated. But when I download my sales register, the reversal entry would not have impacted the sales register. So again, if I do, the sales will be showing a bit more, but the invoicing will be showing a bit less. So doing a categorization and reconciling even in such cases would be required. There are multiple other scenarios. These are the few things which I would explain, but there are multiple other things where there would be a difference with my sales register and invoicing, such as table number 5 of GSTR 9C. That is where we do a reconciliation from 9 to 9C. That is my sales books of accounts in the financial statements to my GSTR 9. All such transactions will come and fall under the same bucketing, the same sales register versus e-invoicing. This is the major reconciliation which we will have to do before filing my GSTR 1. This is one of the reconciliation. So now next, let us come to the next reconciliation. The second reconciliation which would be required before I do my GSTR1 filing. This is my IRN, that is e-invoice versus GSTR1. I'll be doing the reconciliation for IRN generated invoices with my GSTR1 auto-populated invoices. The thing is, say, now I raise an invoice. The time limit for cancelling an invoice has been expired. That is 24 hours has been expired. The only option which the NIC and the GST has given is you will have to do an amendment. That a value amendment has to be done directly on the GSTR1 portal, the GST portal. Say, accidentally while raising an invoice, I raised an amount of rupees 1 lakh instead of 10,000. 24 hours also post has been passed away. So now I come to my GSTR1 portal and I reduce that 1 lakh to 10,000, which is the actual figure. But I am bound to get a notice or a clarification whichever might be the case after proper implementation of e-invoicing happens, we'll come to know, saying that why is there a difference between IRN and GSTR1. So we will have to keep a note of it or catch of it, and then we'll have to see, I had done a mistake while generating. Since the time limit had passed, I could not cancel the invoice. I have done an amendment in the GSTR1 portal. This is one of the case where there will be a difference between the IRN and the GSTR1. The second one is B2C to B2B. I would have thought this is a B2C and I would have not even passed an invoice. Later on, I came to know this was a B2B invoice because my customer gave the GST number at the end moment while filing my GST1, because of which I was not able to file my I was not able to raise an e-invoice, which is again a mistake. So I can raise an e-invoice for backdated entry now. So that would be in the next month or something, but I would have not yet filed the GST1 of the previous month. So those kind of transactions also should be given a due care of it, so that it happens in a smooth way. So the next one is advances, which I already told in the previous slide also. Advances received needs to be reported in GSTR1, but not under invoicing, but it would have been part of sales register. The same thing holds here good also. My GSTR1 includes the advance sections in a specified table, but by e-invoicing or the IRN generated will not be happened. So keeping a due care of it, which all are advances would be important, because I'll have to do an adjustment of the invoices. Also, when the invoice is raised, so adjustment of advances and advance amount both also has to be taken care, because this will have a huge impact, because the taxes for the advances should have been paid in correct that month, but invoice has been raised, so adjustment has to be done. So this also has to be taken a due care of it. And the other thing would be validations. As we know, NIC or the IRP portal is doing only 3 validations. One is invoice deduplication errors, and the second one is GST number correction errors and the tax type errors. Only these 3 validations the NIC portal or the IRP portal is doing. However, the GSTN portal is doing much more validations. So, a proper care has to be taken if you are raising an invoice on the IRP and the GSTR1, both should sync with each other. You cannot have a different details for IRN and different details for GSTR1. So validations has to be done at the initial stage itself, which would match both the GST as well as IRN. And the next one is exemption category reconciliation, banking only core. You can ignore this section as of now. There was a press release, there was a FAQ which the GST portal had increased, saying that this has been removed. So as of now, you can ignore this exemption category reconciliation. For example, banking only, core banking is exempted. This is now no more required. This is removed. The next one is non-GST, nil rated and exempted. In case of non-GST, nil rated and exempted, I, as a seller, need not raise a tax invoice. I will have to raise a bill of supply, because this is my goods which have been sold without having any impact on the GST amount. So, ideally, since the government has not given any option for raising an invoice for a bill of supply, this would not be required in the IRN generation. However, the details of nil rated, exempted or non-GST has to be given at a summary level in my GSTR1 portal. So these also has to be categorized and kept it aside, so that we can do the reconciliation in a simple way. Okay. So the next reconciliation would be e-way bill versus IRN. So e-way bill, although the data is directly pushed for all the e-way bill generation from the e-invoicing, there could be chances there is a difference between IRN generated e-way bills and the e-way bill which is there on the e-way bill portal. So even today, say before e-invoicing coming into picture also, government was issuing a lot of notices for GSTR1 versus e-way bill. The same thing is continuing now. Now it is not GSTR1 versus e-way bill, rather it is e-way bill versus IRN. So let us try to analyze one by one what all will be the scenarios where there would be a difference between e-way bill and IRN. E-way bill would be showing low, whereas IRN would be showing less high, and the vice versa cases also might be there. The first thing would be service bills. All my service invoices, e-way bill would not be required. As we know, this is a service invoice, so this also has to be means for this there would be a difference. So all the SAC invoices, if properly bifurcated, at one shot we can get it all those details. So all my SAC invoices, e-way bill will not be generated. The next one would be where my supply or a sale for that particular invoice is less than 50,000 rupees. You have an option either to generate or not generate. So on basis of which you can categorize directly by putting a filter only for invoice values less than 50,000. And the next thing would be cancellation of e-way bill will be required to cancel an invoice. As I told you earlier also, if you want to cancel any particular invoice, then if for which e-way bill has already been generated, you cannot do so. You will have to cancel the e-way bill first, then come back to the IRN portal. There might be chances you cancelled the e-way bill, but the time limit for cancelling the IRN has gone. So those kind of invoices also has to be properly categorized, bucketed, and kept aside, so that in future, if we receive any notice or during the time of audit, we can have a clear picture of it. The next thing would be goods transferred on DC. So when I'm transferring the goods on delivery challenge basis, e-invoice is not required. Say I have a godown in Bangalore itself. I'm transferring the goods from there to here. So I should keep a proper track of it. So I should keep a proper track of it. For those transactions, e-invoicing would not be required. Only and goods are routed to delivery channel. So whenever delivery channel is also there, I should raise a e-way bill. So reconciliation of such kind of transactions also would be required. The next one would be CKD and SKD, semi-knockdown and completely knockdown transactions. What would happen in case of CKD and SKD transaction? This would be applicable when there is one single invoice for the goods which I have raised, but the goods which have been supplied cannot be transported in one single vehicle. Say suppose windmills. The best example for this would be windmills. The volume or the size of the windmill would be very huge, so I cannot transfer the data goods in one single lorry or something. So that time what happens, I would have to generate multiple e-way bills for separate, but there would be single invoice itself. So one more thing after e-invoicing coming into picture is the concept of duplicate for transporter, triplicate for the recipient is no more required. It is just one single invoice which would be sufficient. And as specifically mentioned in the previous slides also, sales returns e-way bill has to be generated only through delivery channel. So reconciliation for delivery channel and IRN would be required here also. Here a three-way reconciliation would be required, that is GSTR1 versus e-way bill versus e-invoice, and GSTR1 versus e-invoice. Multiple types of reconciliation has to be taken care, which has already been discussed in the previous things itself. So before having a proper track of it, and verify the status of the supplier. As I told you, I can raise a invoice, but I cannot raise a e-way bill. So due care has to be taken care, and all the notices on account of non-reconciliation has to be handled with due respect. This is one of the major one. I can tell you IRN versus GSTR 2A inbound invoices. Let me start giving explanation about it with a detailed way. Say, I am a company. I have a turnover of 1,000 crores in the preceding financial year. So, all my outward or sales invoices should be always an e-invoice. Proper. This is okay for me. I will follow properly these conditions and I'll raise an e-invoice. I am taking inward supplies from some other person. How will I as a normal person know whether such person would be applicable for e-invoicing or not? This is one primary question. How, as a person, I will know for my inward invoices, e-invoicing would be applicable or not. Though government has clarified, it will give us place where if you put the GST number of the vendor, you can see if it is applicable for e-invoicing or not. Yes, that would be applicable. But practically, I cannot do this for each and every vendor where my vendor list will run up to 3,000, 4,000 vendors at once. So industries have started this practice of getting a declaration itself directly from the vendor every year saying whether he is applicable for e-invoicing or not. How we onboard the vendors as on today, there must be one additional form which needs to be circulated saying if the vendor is applicable for e-invoicing, then he must specifically mark it as yes and give that additional details, or whenever he is made applicable, then he has to circulate such details whichever is required. So this would be the best practice which would be there. But how is this connected with the reconciliation? I'll tell you. So as I told, I am a registered person where my turnover has exceeded 500 crores. So I will raise an e-invoice. Good. Now there are two types of vendors from whom I am purchasing the goods. First person turnover is 300 crores. The second person's turnover is 600 crores. The 300 crores person will give a normal tax invoice, which is not a IRN, which is not a e-invoice, which will not have any IRN or QR code. Now, as per section 16, I would be eligible to claim the credit only if I have a proper tax invoice with me. So, now this invoice, which is not a e-invoice, is a proper document. Since the other person's turnover is less than the prescribed limit, I can take the credit, no harm in it. When it comes to the other person, 600 crores means turnover of 600 crores, he will have to raise a e-invoice for me to take the credit. Yes. If he raises a normal invoice, then I will not be eligible to take the credit as per the section. So ideally, I should get an e-invoice with the QR code, IRN and the digital signature of the IRP to claim the ITC. So this is a major reconciliation. So this kind of documents has to be categorized separately before taking the credit. That is why I specifically mentioned of obtaining a declaration. So that I should categorize all such vendors who are above 500 crores as to a separate category, and while doing my accounting transactions, I will have to add the IRN, QR code and the digital signature for claiming the credit. So this is one of the major reconciliations one has to be kept in mind before implementing e-invoicing or taking the credit. Although we have seen the rule 36(4) coming into picture also, because of which my credit would be restricted only to the 110% of the balance available for GSTR 2A. Yes. So this is a reconciliation for my inbound transactions, which a due care has to be taken. The next one would be, as usual, the rule 37 reversal on account of 180 days non-payment. Right. So if I have not made the payment to my vendor within 180 days, then the credit which has already been claimed has to be reversed. So we'll have to take a proper care of it with the credit which has already been done and the reconciliation which is there even today also. The next thing is the GSTR 2B, which the government has come up with. A small, a brief explanation about 2-3 minutes about GSTR 2B, since we are explaining about GSTR 2B. I'll try to give an example between GSTR 2A and GSTR 2B. Although both are same, there is a quite massive difference of GSTR 2A and 2B. GSTR 2A is a dynamic document which changes every day, every minute, every hour. It changes. Today I download GSTR 2A, the total credit would be 200 crores. After 2-3 hours, if I check, it might become 201 crores also. It is a very dynamic document. Whereas GSTR 2B is not a dynamic document, rather it is a static document. To which extent it is static? Yes, it is static to a certain extent. GSTR 2B will be static as on 11th of the succeeding month. Say, for my September month return, GSTR 2B will stop getting populated on October 11th at 11:59 p.m. Post which the data might come and sit in my GSTR 2A, but it will not come and sit in my GSTR 2B. So this is one of the major things, static document, and this is a dynamic document. So one more thing is 2A gets populated based on the return filing month and the invoice date, whereas 2B will be populated just based on the return filing month when it has been populated. Say January 2020 invoice has been filed on September 2020. This comes and sit in my September 2020 return itself. This happens in GSTR 2B. And one of the major thing is government has auto calculated whether it is an eligible or ineligible in certain cases. One of the classic example for the government to auto think whether it is eligible or ineligible is based on my place of supply and recipient GST. Say I am located in Karnataka. I go to Andhra Pradesh and I stay in a hotel. As per place of supply, the registered the hotel will raise a CGST SGST invoice because the place of supply would be where the immobile property is located. So he will raise a bill to my Karnataka GSTN, but he will charge CGST SGST in the invoice. So what will happen? CGST SGST has been charged, whereas the recipient GST is Karnataka. So this the government is auto calculating and making it as ineligible transactions. This is happening in 2B, but not in GSTR 2A. In future, till we have not received any notification for GSTR 2B, although it has been live on the portal, but in near future, what might happen is the details which is there in my GSTR 2B will automatically flow to my 4A5 table of GSTR 3B, that is my all other ITC. This would be happening in the near future. Not much time would take, but yes, this will also definitely happen. What will be the impact because of GSTR 2B on working capital? The major impact would be, say, I have purchased from a vendor who is a quarterly return filer, which is GSTR 1. There, what happens is he will be, as per the act, as per the provisions, he is required to file a GSTR 1 only after the end of the quarter, that is 31st October or something. But I have purchased from it in the month of July itself, so I'll have to wait for 3 months to take the credit. Yes, the government has clarified, yes, you will have to wait because of the discrimination which the government only has provided. This will have a huge impact. But this invoice will be coming in my October month return itself, because if it files before 31st October, so it will come in November while filing my October month return in November. That is my GSTR 3B. And also specifically mentioned, capturing of trade name along with legal name would become mandatory because it is a mandatory field. So again, I would request you to fill the form which has been circulated on the chat box for trying the free e-invoicing solution, how exactly the e-invoicing would be done. The next one would be, I'll just show you a 5-6 minute a small demo, how e-invoice generation happens on the ClearTax portal. Just give me a minute, I'll just share my screen. So I hope you are able to see my screen. Right. So this is the e-invoicing portal of ClearTax, which is e-invoice.cleartax.in. Once you log into this portal, this will be the home screen where it says generate e-invoice, view invoice, import history, purchase invoice. I'm going to click on generate e-invoice, post which it will ask which template you want to select. We have an option here of generating the e-invoice from government Excel template or the custom Excel template, which means the ERP will generate a dump from which I will do a mapping, then I'll generate tally or clear tax template. So here I'm just clicking on custom Excel template. I'll select that template which has been mapped and I'll select the file from my computer. Then I will start processing I'll start doing the ingestion. So once it is uploaded, the processing is completed. This type of screen you will see, which says the total number of transactions in your Excel was 10, but ClearTax has done few validations, which says there is one error in the template which has been uploaded. So let us see what kind of error was it. Here, once you see it, you can click on proceed and validate the data. We can see the invoice number had an invoice number digits of more than 16 digits. So that is why ClearTax did not accept this invoice. Now either we will have to rectify or change the invoice. So now we'll think that 111 was an accidental amount number. So I'm just removing the 111 number. Then I'll try to save and validate the invoice number. So that let's see how exactly it would work. Now after saving, I'll just proceed to validate. Now I can see the number of errors has been reduced to 0. Now you can see all documents has been, the 10 documents which was there in my Excel has been uploaded. Now I can see the IRN generated has been 0, IRN failed is 0, and IRN not generated is 0, cancelled is 0. Now I will just click on, I'll select bulk invoices. I can just generate one by one, or I can do bulk invoices. I'll select the bulk invoices and I'll click on, I'll select and I'll click on generate IRN. Once I click on generate IRN, the details will start going to the NIC portal. This would depend upon number of invoices I'm generating. So once the invoices pass and the IRN is generated, which you can see, this is the IRN generated status, which shows as generated. In the future fields, you can see the IRN number also, which has been generated. And you can do multiple filters whichever you want to like to do as. The next one would be the printing. Let us click on one particular invoice and click on print. There are a number of templates which you want to print an invoice, and you can create your custom template also as per your requirement. So as of now, I'm just clicking on any one invoice template format so that we can understand how exactly it happens. So this is how it will happen. This is the QR code which has been government, which has the IRN, which has the digital signature and everything, and this is the IRN number. Which all other details which was there in my invoice. The next thing is I'll just try to. The next thing is you can either download all these IRNs generated as a JSON, as a CSV, which is nothing but an Excel, and you can keep it your further reference, or you can download all the invoices to your as a JSON and upload it back to your ERP. Why is uploading back to your ERP required? So that the ERP will have all the details of IRN and the digital signature and the QR code. So you can download all this as JSON and upload it back to your ERP also. So the next one I'll be showing would be cancel. If I want to cancel any invoice, click on that particular invoice and mark it as cancel IRN. Then automatically, we have two more options where you can, I'm sorry. Yeah. The next one would be whether can I send an invoice copy directly from the ClearTax portal. Yes, you have an option to generate an invoice from ClearTax portal and send an email also. This is the option which I'm just showing. If I click on more option, a particular invoice, and click on email option, I will get an email to CC, BCC, subject and message. What will happen is automatically the subject, you can edit it, you can write whatever it is, and if you click on send, the email also for that particular invoice will be sent to the customer. This is one additional feature which we have provided, which the INA is not doing, so that you need not download the invoice, go to your Gmail or your mail, then you need not do it. You can directly do that activity directly here also. And the next one would be cancel, which I was just mentioning. I click on cancel IRN. Once I click on cancel IRN, as per the IRP, it has the reasons for cancellation, whether it is a wrong entry or duplicate invoice. I just click on duplicate invoice, and it will ask for the remark. So on the remark, I'll just write it as duplicate so that we will have a reference, or else you can write whatever. Once you click on proceed to cancel IRN, the details will flow back to the IRP and it will be marked as cancelled. Here you can see now the IRN status has been marked as cancelled, and on the top you can see the total number of 10, IRN generated 9 and IRN cancelled is 1. So this is how ClearTax e-invoicing would work. So this is all about the e-invoicing practical difficulties and the e-invoicing generation demo, which was shown clearly. So the next would be the Q&A session. So I just want, if we have any questions, then we can start answering the questions about the e-invoicing. Whether e-invoicing is required in cases of supplies to UIN. So whether such categories of transactions is treated as my B2B supply or B2C or export, basis of which we'll have to do. Specifically on e-invoicing, it has not been marked as UIN, so ideally it is not required. Is e-invoicing required for exempt supply schedule 3 transactions? Exempt supplies, as I specifically mentioned, a bill of supply needs to be passed, so e-invoicing would not be applicable. Is it applicable for service invoice also? Yes, e-invoicing is applicable for service invoices also. How to amend tax invoice on GST portal for current month, as GST portal do not allow us to view if invoices are more than 500. Right question? Now you can download this back as a JSON file, upload it in the offline utility, make changes there and re-upload it back there. E-invoicing is mandatory for direct exports. Yes, even for export transactions, e-invoicing is mandatory, and you will have to fill in all the mandatory information. Even for exports, there is one additional field which the government for e-invoicing has pushed up, which says in case it is not additional field, it is an optional field where you can put the the currency type also. Part B is also generated for by transporter. How it can be overwritten on EIR, higher an e-invoice. Definitely, e-invoice does not require the details of Part B. It is left to your discretion. Even today, on an e-invoice, it is not mandatory. If you want, you can push it back. Otherwise, not required. Only the e-invoice requires. If you want, you can push it both details of Part A and Part B, or else it would not be required. What about BT? I did not understand what is BT. If you could explain, Shushi. After generation of e-invoice, whether e-way bill gets generated automatically on e-way bill portal or to be generated manually on e-way bill portal. Suppose I have generated all the vehicle details to in the Excel template. You need not generate it automatically auto generated. You can just print the IRN and the e-way bill number which has been given by ClearTax back to you on the invoice. That would be sufficient. Export invoice, e-invoice itself is enough to export of goods to the recipient countries. Yes, e-invoice is required. Export invoices also, e-invoice is made mandatory with the additional fields and the optional fields which has made specifically applicable for export transactions. Whether e-invoice is required in cases where invoice are billed to the registered state and recipient, but place of supply is different. Whether the recipient is not registered, yes, then also it is required. In case of bill to ship to transactions, the place of supply would be the bill to as per the prescribed section. Then definitely we will have to raise the e-invoice irrespective of the fact, even if the place of supply is to an unregistered person. Is there any relaxation for the first month of e-invoicing? Yes, there is a relaxation. I had a detailed explanation about what was the relaxation in the initial slide itself. 30 days of relaxation which has been provided, where you can raise the IRN after 30 days of generating the e-invoice. What about branch transfer? Branch transfer happening within the same state will not be treated as a supply, so it would not be required. In case of branch transfers happening from one state to different state, then as per schedule 1 section 7 it would be treated as a supply, then e-invoice would be required. Delivery challans are not required to go through the IRN. No, delivery challans are not required to go through the IRN, because E-invoicing is nothing but an invoice. Delivery challan is not an invoice, rather it is just a challan copy. It is not required. E-invoicing is required for IC sales. IC sales is not at all a supply. Then why e-invoicing is required? When it is treated as a supply, let us write an e-invoice. I guess this question was asked many a times before also. E-invoicing is not required for IC sales. First, we have to see whether IC sales is a supply. IC sales is not at all treated as a supply because the goods are not at all entering into India. The sale is happening before entering the borders of India, territorial borders of India. So it will not be required. Which input is to be considered for ITC, GSTR 2A or 2B? For filing the GSTR 3B, it would be GSTR 2B and not GSTR 2A until it is notified. Till now, it is GSTR 2A only, Shivkant Chavan. But in future, after the notification comes, it would be 2B. But as on today, it would be GSTR 2A only because 2B is not yet a notified form or nothing for that notification has been passed. So I hope I have clarified all the doubts. So thank you. I would request if anything is there regarding the e-invoicing, then you can directly mail us to india.sales@cleartax.in. And in case you want to have a free invoicing session, free invoicing tool, then you can fill out the form which was circulated earlier. If the admin could post it again, so if anyone is interested, they can do it again. So meanwhile, I'll just answer one more question. Mentioning of QR code and IRN in current tax invoice format. Yes, definitely. You can print back the QR code. IRN also is not required. QR code would be sufficient. If you print back the QR code on the normal invoice which has been printed, that would be sufficient. Whether ClearTax gives a platform for reconciliation of e-invoice sales receivable. Yes, ClearTax does give all the type of reconciliation, which is not there as of today, but many of the reconciliation has already been made available. So you can visit our ClearTax portal or you can get in touch with our experts and they'll give a detailed explanation how to do the different type of reconciliation using our ClearTax module. Fine, that was a great session. Thank you everyone.